What did Darth Vader's collection of Sith artifacts actually look like? Greetings again, Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives, where for one reason or another, all Sith collect many artifacts. More often than not, it is a collection of strange and powerful artifacts or ancient knowledge from the Dark Lords of eras gone by. When thinking about those that amass great hoards of Sith treasure, a lot of the time we talk about Darth Sidious. Palpatine's main hobby away from ruling the galaxy was collecting and studying ancient lore and knowledge. He was obsessed with figuring out the secrets of his predecessors, collecting and researching what they had all left behind. Vader, however, was less interested in trinkets such as these. We've talked about this before, but the apprentice of the Emperor was far more interested in carrying out military prospects, hunting down Jedi, than he was in actually learning what it meant to be a Sith Lord in any way. He wanted Palpatine's training so that he could become more powerful, but when it came to actual Sith lore, Vader wasn't really one for homework, a trait that remained after his years of Anakin. The only time he really goes to study or collect something is because it proves to be immediately useful to him. So we have to keep in mind when it comes to the studying of Darth Vader's collection and artifacts, that it was far less extensive than that of Palpatine's collection. The only real thing of note that Vader kept in canon was the Exegol Wayfinder. So today we'll be focusing on the expanded works and Legends continuity. So with that, what did Darth Vader collect? And what sort of lore and knowledge did he covet? Over the course of the lore, Vader has interacted with several artifacts, but has only really actually kept a few for his own personal collection. After thorough research, we can currently confirm exactly 5 objects that belong to Lord Vader. 3 of them were always kept away in his personal vault in his castle, and 1 of them remained on his person at all times. In Legends, the place where Vader actually lived was known as the Bast Castle. The Bast Castle was a palace that had once belonged to Dooku on the world of Vajun, but following the rise of the Empire, Sidious simply gave it to Lord Vader as a gift. Vajun was a planet rich in the dark side, and so with Dooku's palace already in tow, it was very convenient for Vader to just command it there, to use it for his own studies in the dark side of the Force, just as Dooku had. But of course, the Dark Lord didn't actually spend a lot of time there personally, and as a result, the castle was pretty bare bones. There was very little in the way of decoration besides an obsidian statue of Lord Vader himself. Otherwise, it was all defense systems, a meditation chamber, a workshop, a training room, and of course, Darth Vader's personal vault. This was the only vault that existed in Vader's possession too. Neither his Super Star Destroyer nor his palace suite on Coruscant contained any of his personal items, of which there were very few. In fact, Vader's personal collection wouldn't even be discovered until nearly 20 years after his death. The first artifact is the most famous, the lightsaber of Obi-Wan Kenobi. After defeating his old master on the Death Star, Vader took his lightsaber as a trophy, keeping it safe at the palace that he lived in so that he could always look at it and remember the final victory. Vader got a sense of sick pleasure from finally being able to do to Obi-Wan what he had done to him on Mustafar. We know that when he was burning, he watched with hatred as Obi-Wan took his lightsaber off of the beach. He had tried to retrieve his lightsaber with the Force at that time, but was unable to because he was filled with shock. All of the pain he was experiencing rushed to his brain, and he was unable to control the Force. Vader had liked his Jedi lightsaber a great deal, and had always fully intended on simply exchanging the crystal within it for a red one, but he was forced now to construct a new lightsaber once it was stolen from him. But now, with Kenobi dead, Vader got to retrieve his lightsaber instead, as a bit of petty revenge. Another intriguing observation about it being the Bast Castle is that Vader had to have kept it on his person throughout all the events of A New Hope. If you think about it, after Luke and his friends escaped, they went to Yavin 4 where the Empire tracked them down, and then immediately launched into the Battle of Yavin. Vader would be on the Death Star the entire time until he got into the TIE Advanced, at which point he would join the battle in space. But since there wasn't a break during this time where he could have put Obi-Wan's lightsaber on his Star Destroyer, it obviously didn't explode on the Death Star. This meant that the weapon was so important to Lord Vader that he kept it with him even when he was in his TIE. Only after those events did he likely store it on his Star Destroyer for the time being, and then returned it to his personal place of living. This goes to show just how determined he was to retain a piece of his old master after all Obi-Wan had taken from him. Not to mention, Vader had been obsessed with finding Kenobi for years, and keeping that lightsaber was a piece of gratification that the Dark Lord could not pass up. But now, let's move on. The second object at the Bast Castle was one of 3 holocrons that we know Darth Vader possessed. It was a Sith holocron, but curiously, it has not been disclosed who it originally belonged to. After the fall of the Empire, a Force-sensitive clone by the name of X1 had claimed the mantle of a Dark Lord of the Sith. But since he had no knowledge of how to actually become a Sith Lord, he traveled to Darth Vader's castle in order to learn. While X1 was there, he discovered the Holocron and took it with him to Mustafar. While we don't know anything about the Holocron itself, the next time we see X1, he is significantly more powerful and knowledgeable in the dark side than before. In fact, he had become so dangerous that he managed to defeat a Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker and even trap the young Jedi. I love the theory on which the Holocron could be, that being that it is within the Bast Castle, it may have belonged to Count Dooku. We do actually know that Dooku had his own personal collection of holocrons as well, and it's a possibility that this could have been one from his private stock. But if we narrow down the criteria a little bit more and examine more evidence, I think we can figure out exactly which holocron this is. Firstly, if only this holocron was found in the Bast Castle, then it would be a place where Dooku would have a special purpose for it, perhaps for it to remain hidden in secret. This means that it was quite special, more than any of the other holocrons in his collection. Secondly, if X1 went from a Sith wannabe to an extremely powerful Dark Lord in the span of just a few weeks, this is a testament to the power of the holocron. In many rare cases, holocrons don't just impart knowledge, but they can actually grant power as well. There is only one artifact in all of Dooku's collection that meets that criteria, and that is the Dark Holocron. This specific artifact is one of the most important and mysterious pieces in all of Sith history. Its maker is completely unknown, but it was discovered on one of Naga Sadow's warships, claimed by the Jedi after the Great Hyperspace War. It was recovered directly by Master Odan and was said to be the very first Sith holocron recovered by the Jedi. Its power was magnificent, its knowledge terrible. We know not what the contents were, but we do know that anyone who possessed it gained a great deal of knowledge, and their powers in the Force were amplified. The Dark Holocron came into Dooku's possession midway through the Clone Wars, which caused his power to sharply increase for a time being. It has not been told what happened to it after Dooku died though, as the last time it is seen as his collection is the last time that we can find it in the lore. Dooku clearly wanted to keep this hidden from Sidious, so it could have been spirited away to the Bast Castle, away from his master. Now again, this is all just a theory, but the evidence lined up that Vader would possess the Dark Holocron for the time being, and that he too attempted to keep it secret from Sidious, an heirloom of a previous apprentice. Now on a completely opposite end of the spectrum, the final object that was in Vader's vault was a Jedi Holocron. The Holocron was created sometime following the death of Exar Kun in 3996 BBY by a female Jedi by the name of Asli Chrisman. She had taught young Jedi for over 200 years before making the Holocron, keeping it stored in the Exis Station, which was an ancient Jedi space station that served as a library. When the Jedi Order abandoned the station, they brought the Holocron to the temple, where it would then be recovered following Order 66. Master Dooku and council member Yarel Poof also addressed their own lessons inside of this Holocron whenever it was recovered, adding to it. Vader seemed to have a very strange and mysterious relationship with this specific holocron as well. At one point prior to the Clone Wars, a Padawan by the name of Jax Paven was studying it. This is when he encountered Anakin, who saw the young Jedi studying. After Order 66 though, Vader targeted Jax, hunting him down like a dog throughout the underbelly of Coruscant, and after obtaining the item, Vader kept it locked away in his secret vault, right next to the lightsaber of Obi-Wan Kenobi. None of Vader's personal records mention the holocron whatsoever, leaving it a secret to him alone. It's likely that not even Palpatine knew of its existence. The contents of the holocron don't do anything to clear up the mystery of why Vader was obsessed with it either. It contained knowledge for the Jedi Masters of the training of very young Force-sensitive children, basic lessons, meditation techniques, but it did touch on some more complex Force techniques, such as Malacia, a lesser-known ability of inducing nausea and dizziness in an opponent, turning their equilibrium against them. It is well contained an insightful lecture from Master Poof on Jedi mind tricks, and an anecdote from Dooku on how he learned to perfect telekinesis. However, Master Chrisman also speaks of the Great Sith War, and Exar Kun, and even makes mention of a Darth Endedu. This may seem trivial, but it's actually huge. The Jedi had made a purposeful effort to scrub all mentions of Endedu from every piece of data that they could find. Darth Bane had to jump through insane hoops in order to obtain a tiny scroll with even mentions of the Sith Lord in the world of Prakith. But here was one of the last Jedi sources that actually speaks of the immortal Sith God King. But again, this only gives us more questions than answers. Why would Vader want this? Was one that we know that Vader kept away from the Bast Castle. It was simply known by the identification number SD41263, but it contained teachings of the Sith Lord Darth Ramage, so for brevity's sake, we'll simply refer to this as the Holocron of Ramage. The Dark Lord was one of the lesser known members of the Rule of Two. Hardly anything is known about his life directly, even though he was the Holocron's constructor. We don't really even know at what point in history he lived, besides the fact that he existed at some point between Darth Vectivus and Darth Tenebris. We do know though that the Sith Lord was obsessed with experimenting on cephalons, a species that could perceive past and future events through time. Darth Ramage had apparently been hoping to explore the possibility of time travel by using the species, and now it had belonged to Jax Paven, who had been keeping it a secret as well. He had kept it since it contained knowledge of an important alchemical mixture, one that combined the Boda plant with pyronium mineral. The Boda was a very potent force-sensitive plant that was said to drastically increase the abilities of a Jedi, and pyronium was a type of gem that was able to store vast amounts of electromagnetic energy. Lord Vader tracked down Jax Paven to it, and had managed to retrieve both his holocron and a piece of the Boda plant. It seemed that Vader had tried to recreate a ritual, combining these two ingredients together, attempting to strengthen his own power in the Force, to heal his broken body. However, the experiment was obviously a failure. Whenever he got a hold of the Boda plant, it caused his Force powers to temporarily destabilize, resulting in uncontrolled bursts of Force energy, potent enough to atomize humanoids in the vicinity. Vader continued to keep the holocron of Darth Ramage until it would be stolen from him later by one of his final apprentices. And the last artifact that we want to talk about is one that you might not expect. The amulet of Darth Bane's rival, Lord Khan. Skir Khan had been the one who created the Brotherhood of Darkness, an alliance of Sith Lords during the waning days of the New Sith Wars. In order to solve the problem of infighting, Lord Khan had the idea of making a faction, one that declared that all Sith Lords were equal to one another, with no Dark Lord to rise above the rest. Bane saw Lord Khan as a heretic. Bane believed that the dark side was more potent when it was only infused in a select few individuals, and he believed that Lord Khan had weakened the Sith by not only diluting the dark side among many Dark Lords, but by insisting that they were all equals, squashing the possibility of none rising to greatness, as many of the Sith should, as is their way. Bane manipulated Lord Khan into leading the Brotherhood of Darkness to utter ruin though, which left Bane himself as the last surviving Sith Lord, the heir to the Sith legacy, and the creation of the Rule of Two. Lord Khan's amulet of invincibility was the only thing that survived, the only thing that remained of him. Khan himself was a pretty weak Dark Lord, so his indestructible amulet had only a few properties to it, its most important being that it could make a small localized area invincible. Apparently Sidious grafted the amulet inside of Vader's right arm, making Vader's right glove apparently indestructible. It provided the wearer the ability to interpret ancient Sith writings and slightly boosted their connection to the dark side. This was used as a convenient way to help Vader quickly study ancient Sith texts, but it was an amulet that went to waste on Lord Vader, since he rarely ever read any of those writings or scrolls. Out of universe, this bit of lore was actually created to explain how Vader managed to deflect Han Solo's blaster shots in The Empire Strikes Back. The glove of Vader was invented during a time before the Force ability to Terminus was, the ability to use the Force to absorb energy, and so, this was brought into the lore separately. So before the prequels, the Legends writers attempted to explain this strange feat of Vader by insisting that his right glove, and just his right glove, was totally indestructible. But with that, my friends, those are all of the artifacts that Vader carried with him in his own personal collection. We invite you to comment down below if we happen to miss anything from the EU, but as far as we've found, these were all of the items that Vader had on a constant basis close to him. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more holocrons detailing Force-powered artifacts, then be sure to let us know down below. We also plan on covering Dooku's Sith collection. But as always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting today. Which of the artifacts do you find the most interesting? And may the Force be with you.